Uruguay spent years positioning itself as a regional digital pioneer. The state built an interconnected society, laying the groundwork for a centralized national digital wallet. That image of modernization fractured in late 2025, when the Banco Hipotecario del Uruguay, the state mortgage bank, was hit. A ransomware group known as Crypto24 infiltrated the network and extracted over 700 gigabytes of sensitive financial and customer data. The bank's payment portals collapsed. For months, customers were unable to process basic transactions, open savings accounts, or manage their loans, while the internal networks remained paralyzed. The state's narrative of a high-tech society met the reality of a massive infrastructural collapse, raising the question of who was truly in control. When faced with these failures, the Uruguayan state relies on a strict crisis management strategy. Independent researchers call it the protocol of silence, a coordinated effort to downplay severe infrastructural breaches as minor IT incidents. Traditional media echoes this strategy. They print press releases verbatim, reassuring the public, even when evidence suggests otherwise. This graph charts the timeline of a typical breach, showing how stolen data spreads rapidly across the dark web, while official government warnings lag weeks behind. This delay creates a security gap, where the public remains unaware while threat actors actively exploit their private information. Because the press fails to scrutinize these sanitized official statements, the institutions face zero public accountability. Without pressure to audit their systems, they simply patch the most obvious flaw and wait for the next attack. While ransomware groups initiate the damage, the state's monopoly on the truth, facilitated by an unquestioning media, guarantees that the public remains vulnerable long after the initial breach. This reliance on secrecy is backed by a legal environment that has historically punished those who expose technical flaws. To see how aggressive this posture is, look at Alberto Daniel Hill. He built a career as an elite forensic examiner for Interpol. In 2014, Hill discovered a critical vulnerability exposing hundreds of thousands of patient records while attempting to book a medical appointment. He reported it to the National Cybersecurity Response Center. Instead of fixing it quietly, the state prosecuted him, making him the first person in Uruguay jailed for a computer-related crime. That aggressive legal stance continued over the years, notably with the arrest of a local hacker known as Vlad under strict new cyber laws. By criminalizing the researchers finding and fixing vulnerabilities, the state alienated the technical community. This birthed an ideological hacktivist movement aimed at humiliating the institutions that hid the flaws. That ideological blowback took the form of a threat actor known as La Pampa Leaks. Angered by the state's opacity and the arrests of local hackers, they made it their mission to dismantle the illusion of security. In May 2026, they struck 2ID, Uruguay's national digital identity system. La Pampa Leaks extracted 8 gigabytes of data. They bypassed passwords completely, exfiltrating biometric states, active API keys, and detailed profiles of public figures, journalists, and cybercrime police. Right on cue, Antel and the traditional media deployed the protocol of silence. They released statements assuring the public that the attack was contained and that no sensitive authentication keys were compromised. But Alberto Daniel Hill, now operating as an independent digital dissident, bypassed the press entirely. He took to social media to publicly fact-check the state's narrative, posting raw forensic evidence that contradicted the official press releases. The incident had evolved into an open confrontation between the state's narrative and raw forensic proof. The state's insistence on denying the severity of the TUID breach had immediate, tangible consequences. Because they refused to admit the core infrastructure was compromised, they did not revoke the active digital certificates. This flowchart illustrates exactly why that decision was so dangerous. It shows how compromised back-end API keys allow attackers to bypass user authentication. It doesn't matter if your personal password is secure. With API access, a threat actor can falsify biometric validation states and impersonate your digital identity. By prioritizing their reputation and failing to warn the public, the government left hundreds of thousands of citizens defenseless against targeted identity theft and credential stuffing. This brings us to Alberto Hill's ultimate thesis. Transparency is not a vulnerability, but the prerequisite for digital sovereignty. As long as media allows governments to hide behind silence, institutional secrecy remains the greatest threat to our digital future.